radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network.
All right. Good evening. How you doing? It's Fade to Black. Today is Monday, August 11th, 2025. Let's do this, man. Yeah, here we go. Kicking off another brand new week here on Fade to Black. Tonight, live from the UK, we have Graham Nicholls with us. And tonight's show is called Inducing Your Own OBEs. It's going to be a fantastic conversation. Tomorrow night, Tony Rodriguez is here also for the first time, Project Star Maker. Wednesday night, Joanne DiMaggio, Soulmate versus Cellmate. Yeah, man. And then Thursday night, Helena Wabe is with us and going to get our science on. We're going to be talking about Noetic Sciences and her work with ions, all of that and much more. What a great week here on Fade to Black. Very excited. Very excited. Are we doing 4 first-time guests this week? Man, I love that when that happens. Michelle, the best producer on planet Earth. I have 5 events coming up, all of them right now in 2026, because I am busy in production with my TV show for the rest of the year. But in 2026, first up, Conscious Life Expo. That is February 20th through the 23rd at the LAX Hilton. After that, the Contact Modalities Expo, May 1st through the 3rd in Delavan, Wisconsin at the Delavan Lake Resort. Right after that, Contact in the Desert, May 28th through June 1st, 2026. Tickets will be available on Thanksgiving Day. And then after that, I head out to the United Kingdom for the Monty Python Tour of Scotland. Yeah, and that is August 1st through the 9th, 2026. Looking forward to that. For me to lead a tour group like this, centered around one of my favorite films of all time, certainly top 10 greatest films in the history of cinema, to go to the castles and the locations and the Bridge of Death and everything that we're going to be doing is a big deal for me personally. So come and hang out with us. It's going to be a small group. It's almost sold out. A 5-star Michelin restaurants, luxury the whole way. All right. So go and check that out. All of the links for everything that I am doing are below. Oh, yeah. Then right after that, I'm headed back to Peru with Brian Forrester, but we are also going to Easter Island. Yeah, man. And that is in November 2026. I don't have those specific dates yet, but you can go to Hidden Inca Tours. Everything that I'm doing is in the links below. Very simple to do. You know what to do. All right. Where am I at? Oh, the comments. I want to get Graham in here. This is going to be an amazing conversation tonight. But I was watching the comments about the heat around the country. Now, I live in the Mojave Desert. Everybody knows that. And yes, it's typically just raging hot here. It is about as close to the gates of Hades as you can get. I'm sure that the gates of Hades are around here somewhere within a short drive from my house. But it has been really hot. And how hot is it out here right now? It's been going on like this for a couple of weeks. We're going to have tremendous heat for the next few days too as well. It's going to cool down pretty quickly next week. But how hot is it? It's so hot. The sun is so close to me. It's like right here out in the Mojave Desert that I am wearing long sleeve shirts when I ride my Harley for sunburn. Typically, if it's 90 degrees outside, 91, 92, I wear short sleeves. I do. I don't wear shorts, but I wear short sleeves because it's hot. But when it gets this hot with the sun, you're out there just for a couple of minutes in a short sleeve. You can see that's my tan lines. That's my tan lines, right? I have to wear longs. I'm getting tanned through the long sleeve shirts. Look at that. Look at that. That's how hot it is out here right now. You can see the sunburn on my neck. Look at that. It's just brutal. As a matter of fact, my chain hurts. It hurts. That's how bad it is out here, man. Isn't it funny how I really want to get Graham in here, but I got to make this comment. I live out here. At night, 2-3 o'clock in the morning, you go outside, it's 95 degrees, right? It's that hot. And then you miss the winter. It wasn't that cold. This is too hot. But then winter rolls around and it's freezing. You're like, it wasn't that hot during the summer. I am going through those cycles of thought right now. That's how hot it is out here in the Mojave Desert. All right, tonight, Graham Nicholls is here. He's going to be sharing his methods for inducing out-of-body experiences. I'm so excited about this show. All of this verified. And as we get through this, some of this touches on remote viewing, of course, consciousness and other paranormal stuff. And we're going to be talking about how he teaches astral projection. And he's an English author as well as a lecturer, and he's on the board for the Rhine Research Center. He's a leading practitioner and researcher into out-of-body experiences, having his first one in 1987. Now, judging his links are below. Head over to his website. We have it on the description below, throughout social media, and of course over at our website. But judging from his haircut, I think he plays guitar. I would like to welcome to Fade to Black, the one and only Graham Nicholls. Graham, you play guitar?
I don't actually. I'm sorry.
Oh man!
People always think I'm a musician, but not really gifted in that direction.
You got that vibe. You got that vibe. Really quick before we get this started, Ozzy Osborne just passed away, and 2 weeks before his passing, they did the Black Sabbath. The last show for Black Sabbath, and Ozzy got up there and sang with Black Sabbath, and Zach Wilden did his solo stuff too as well. And it was a great send off for the band and for Ozzy. But then he died 2 weeks later. How did England react to that? And did you have a reaction personally? Were you a fan?
I was a fan, not a major fan, but a good friend of mine was at that concert. So, yeah, he's a big fan of Ozzy. And yeah, I think the UK reacted quite majorly, really. Loads of people turned out on the streets when the family were there, and there was loads of people leaving flowers. And, you know, it was a big deal in the UK, yeah.
Yeah. I had a lot of friends that played in that festival for Sabbath, and seeing Ozzy get up there, we were so happy. He sang in a chair, right? And he wanted to get up. You could tell he wanted to get up, but he couldn't. But his voice was there, and we all just, I think, emotionally were connected to that show. I don't think anybody thought that he was about to have a heart attack in a couple of weeks. I think that really took us all by surprise. But his impact, it doesn't matter where your music tastes lie or anything. Black Sabbath influenced everybody, period. It doesn't matter. Country, Western, classical, rock, pop. It doesn't matter. Everybody appreciated his talent, and we all listened to him growing up. And just a sad day. It's a sad day, but I'm glad that he did it. He did it his way. He always did, but he definitely did it his way there in the end. So I just wanted to ask you about that. And the United Kingdom, which has, I don't know if it's in the water or what the deal is in your gene pool of cranking out from that little island, that little, all of the great music that comes out of there. And Ozzy is an example of that, isn't he?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I met I grew up in England, in London, in fact, but I actually live in the other island now. I live in Ireland. So, yeah.
Don't they touch? I'm kidding. Yeah, here's the thing with that. The United States, we have a problem with knowledge of the world. American citizens, by and large, don't give a crap. Most haven't left the country. You know what I mean? And they just have this framework going on that it's all about us. And it couldn't be further from the truth. And if you ask most American citizens anything geography related, history related, monarchy related about it, they don't know. They don't have a clue. Is it Scotland? Is it Wales? What's going on here? I don't understand. Ireland, it's an island. Oh, okay. It's crazy how ignorant we can be about the United Kingdom.
Yeah. And then there's Northern Ireland, which is part of the United Kingdom, but Southern Ireland, which is the Republic of Ireland and is not part of the UK. So
see, don't mess it up.
People too.
I thought that I had it all figured out, and I see you go and you do that. But that's exactly what I'm talking about. And here's the other thing that most people don't know, and I love London, all of the UK. I just love it. But London was a city when Jesus was on the cross. It's how old it is, right? I mean, it's just like crazy.
It's pretty old, yeah.
Yeah. It
was Londinium back then.
Yeah, it was Londinium. Yeah, absolutely. It's crazy. It's just totally nuts. Well, anyway, you're a first-time guest. So you get the first and you get the first-time guest disclaimer, Graham. Next time you're on the show, you don't get it, but you get it now, which is this. Graham, it's just you and I sitting on my couch having a conversation as friends. And where the conversation starts, it starts. Where it ends, but we're going to end as friends. Now, you have to accept so we can move forward.
Okay. I accept.
Yeah, you upsetly accept. I like that. You accept under protest. Let's go. Let's start here, actually, just for some foundation and also for my own knowledge. OBE, out of body experience. What is the definition of that? Because we have astral that can get thrown into it. We have remote viewing that can be, and they may be related and crossover. Maybe they're the same thing. I don't know. But when we're talking about OBEs, what is that?
Well, I take a bit of a different approach to a lot of people. I think a lot of people would define it as just something like a spirit or an astral body coming out of your physical body and then traveling off somewhere. I tend to see it more as something like an extended consciousness, that our conscious awareness can extend beyond the bounds of our brain, and we can have a multisensory experience, an interconnected experience. So something like remote viewing would be on that spectrum or that continuum, but an out of body experience would be like a full immersive experience of it. I mean, when you actually do remote viewing, I do remote viewing as well, and I've spoken on that, etc. But with remote viewing, you're often like fully aware, you're in the room, you're doing something like probing an ideogram, so kind of putting your pen onto a squiggle to try and kind of gauge information. So it's not always immersive in the sense that you're kind of going into it and you're trying to connect psychically in the same way that, say, standard clairvoyance would be, for example. But with an out-of-body experience, I would define it as when you go into a full sensory experience. So you feel literally like you're in another place. You're often able to drift or fly, lift off the ground. You're fully aware in that other place. It's not like a dual awareness or something that you're just tuning into with your mind. It's something that you feel fully that you're at another place. So I think that's where the difference between those things would lie and how I would define it.
What about astral projection?
I think astral projection is really just an esoteric term for an out of body experience, or for an intentionally induced out of body experience. So within theosophy and different traditions, they refer to the idea of the astral body. So you have, depending on what tradition you're looking at, there's different bodies that they identify. So the etheric body would traditionally be the one that moves around on the physical, and then the astral body would be the one that moves around on the astral planes, which would be a kind of semi-imaginary, semi-real, partly illusory, partly factual realm that exists just beyond this one, and that is emotionally driven, would be the traditional framework. So I don't tend to see it in terms of bodies, like I mentioned. I see it more in
I
terms of
like that.
consciousness.
Right. I like that. So I don't want to let this go before we move on. So astral can be more of an imaginary, like cruising by Jupiter out, in the universe, in the astral plane, where an OBE is dealing more with our physical reality around us.
I think an out of body experience is just a more modern scientific term. I mean, you can have experiences that are on other levels that would still be considered an out of body experience. But I think that, yeah, the astral tends to, I mean, going back to the original literature, A.E. Powell, for example, was a famous author who wrote a lot from a sort of theosophical perspective in the early days of this kind of stuff. And he described the astral planes as being partly illusory. So you would see things that are not necessarily objectively real. So I think now people tend to see it maybe more objective when they talk about astral planes, but this is where different opinions and different ideas come into the equation. But I guess for me, I tend to focus more on what we can objectively discover with these experiences. And I think that does include on other levels, but I may be more cautious about what I would define as a genuine sort of other level experience, rather than just saying everything that I experience is definitely real. I think it's like the mind, or like consciousness. You can have experiences that are completely objective and verifiable, and then you can have things that maybe are more, you could be mistaken, or they can, there's lots of different factors that play in. So I just try to take a very scientific approach as much as I can, but also value the subjective and the things that we can't prove as well.
Yeah, sure. During an OBE, do you have your senses? Can you smell?
Yeah.
Can you touch stuff? Can you feel it?
I can definitely feel. Smell is less common in my experiences. Smell and taste are rare, but hearing, feeling, as in touching, and seeing, obviously, all of those things are quite common. So yeah, I think again, it can be different with different people, but with me, that tends to be how it unfolds. And I think the majority, it is more feeling and seeing are the primary senses.
I've asked this question a lot, because I'm terribly interested in this. Can you be seen? Can your presence be felt in the presence of others during an OBE?
That's a really interesting question, actually, because I've always been interested in how far that can go, and I do think you can be seen. I have had experiences where people have described seeing me as a kind of shadow form while I'm out of body. I've also had an experience where a woman reacted to me very definitely. I wasn't able to verify that experience, but it happened in near Marble Arch in central London, and I went into one of the grand houses in that part of London, and a woman came from one room into a sort of lounge room, and she instantly reacted. She kind of threw her hands up she was sort of an Arabic woman. She threw her hands up like a kind of Muslim prayer with her sort of open palms, and just sort of reacted to me. And it was quite surprising and shocking to me at the time. So I kind of left pretty quickly, but it was definitely an interesting experience of someone.
Did she freak out? Did you freak out? Was there a moment there, or did it eventually kind of feel normal?
I think she freaked out a bit. I think she took it like a spiritual experience. It seemed like that to me. She was almost praying. So I think maybe her interpretation was that I was some kind of spiritual being of some
for
form.
Sure, for sure.
Because she's seeing this figure appear. I don't know what she saw me like, and I didn't understand what she said, but she reacted to me in what seemed
looking like you do. She thought you were Jesus. You know, she was like, whoa. I had the reason I'm asking this for a reason. So I'll make this really, really fast. I had a regression therapy session done, a hypnosis session. It wasn't regression. But during this memory was revealed to me about this thing that happened. And I appeared on a ship. Yes. Okay. Like I appeared on the ship, and I was only up there for about 5 seconds, but the persons that I was standing with when this thing allegedly happened, I asked my friend that I was standing next to, I said, man, was I acting strange? He goes, no, man, we were just looking at the craft, and no, nothing you did. I said, okay, all right. I let that go. Now, allegedly, what had happened that was revealed in the session was I was transported onto this ship for a few seconds. And when I appeared on the ship, I was still physically standing on the ground. I was next to my friends, right, down on the ground. And they said I didn't go anywhere. I'm glad that they said, no, you disappeared. No, they said I was standing there acting normal. So that must have been a projection of me on the ship. But they saw me. They turned around and looked at me and just not, like gave me a thing, and then went about their business. And then I was off the ship. I was back on the ground. But they saw my presence. So I often think about it like a remote viewer or somebody that is doing an OBE, something like that, where your consciousness is projected to another location. Can somebody sense that? And would they turn around and look for somebody in the room? I think about that all the time. They must feel it. We all sometimes feel being looked at, right? From behind or whatever. And I would think that your spidey sense would pick up on something like that.
I think you definitely do sometimes. I think it's maybe when the person who's there is sort of tuned in to some degree, or maybe they're open to the possibility of seeing someone or of being aware of that kind of thing. I think if they're open to it, then they may well perceive something. But on average, they don't. But on occasion, it definitely happens. And then also meeting people while they're also having an out-of-body experience. So that can happen as well. I had a student who managed to have an out-of-body experience, and he was involving his young son, who was kind of 11 years old, I think about 11. And they met while in the out-of-body experience in their home. So that was an amazing experience with one of my students, and they both saw each other as a sort of shadow figure again. So that was interesting.
Do you do this on your own without people? Do you do it for fun?
Oh yeah, sure. I do. It's part of my life and my practice. It's been a major part of my life since I was in my teens. My first ever job was working with an author on this topic, and I used to kind of help him sell books at his events, and he was like my mentor, and so it's been my life since then, really.
Do you have a favorite place? a favorite time?
Oh, that's interesting. I've had a lot of experiences around Avebury, Stone Circle, and that kind of ancient complex in England. I've been there a lot physically as well, but I've also had lots of experiences there. I've had experiences of talking about time, going back to Victorian London. So that was something that seems to keep calling me back as well, that kind of period and era. So talking about past lives and things like that, I suspect I might have had some connection to that era. So yeah, I guess those two things have come up quite a lot. And I also used to live in Estonia for 10 years. So that country, it has sort of had an impact on me. I think it's a very spiritual, important place. It's only a tiny country, but I think there's
so much history there. So much history.
Yeah. So that would be another place that I get drawn to or called to.
When you're in the moment, let's say Victorian England, right? Okay. And are you above your body, or are you seeing through your eyes? Are your feet on the ground? Do you feel like you're walking? Or in some cases, is it different? Are you floating? Are you flying?
The most powerful experience I had of Victorian London, I was floating. I grew up in a tower block, a tall building, basically, and I in the out of body experience in this particular one, I came out of the window of this building, and instead of seeing the modern large major road that was outside that building, the road was still there because it's actually a Roman road, so it goes right back to Roman London, but it was all completely different. It was all lower. It was all kind of old Victorian buildings, and I kind of drifted along, and as I was drifting, I looked back at where I'd come from, and instead of the tall building, it was an open field area with a small chapel, which I actually was able to verify. So I got some old maps of the area and found that it did look like that at that time. But I continued along the road, and I went to a market road. And I guess the stereotype that we have of Victorian London, or at least that I had at the time, was that it was all very kind of dreary, and everyone was kind of maybe wearing black or grey or, browns. It was all kind of like that. But in the experience, all the people at this market were all dressed very colourfully. They were very elaborate and much more colourful than you might think. And then again, I did research on that, and I found that the stall traders, the market traders of that time, used to dress in colourful, flamboyant ways in order to attract customers and to,
sure,
so,
yeah. Well,
so
plus everything was so polluted, you know what I mean, back then.
Yeah.
In that period, I can only imagine the serious London fog. When I love your description of that. On my last trip to London, I stayed on the Thames, where the Ferris wheel is, right, where the Shard is, right. So I'm down there in the financial district. But I walk outside of my hotel looking for a place to go smoke. And there's this little alleyway, but connected to the hotel. But anyway, so I go up and I see these gates. I went, oh, okay. And I walk through the gates. Right next to the hotel is this little tiny park. And it's like 3 levels with these benches. And it looked really old. And it was really cool. Tiny, though. It was like 3 sections, maybe 20 feet by 20 feet, right? 3 areas like that. Very small, maybe 8 benches. But I'm sitting there, and I got to this like one angle where I could just see the park, and I couldn't see any modern buildings. So it felt really old. And then I see this plaque. And this is an example of London. I see this plaque. This park was created by blah, blah, blah in 1705 to dedicate public spaces in crowded London. 1705, man. 1705.
That's quite modern, really.
Yeah, right.
There's
Yeah.
buildings in London 1,000 years old. So,
Right. I
yeah.
walked down. I went to Westminster Abbey, and went down and checked out Buckingham Palace. I did all that stuff. Walking around in the financial district, you're walking by buildings. When you stop and you look, and you're like, "That's old." I don't know how old that is, but that is really. It's like Egypt old. It's old. It was one of the most fascinating things to do, is just to walk around London and see what you can see. Yeah, absolutely incredible. How do you enter the state? Do you have a set, like a checklist? Is there one thing that works best?
For me, it is a bit like a similar process to hypnosis or something like that, self-hypnosis, I guess you would say. So I get the first thing I would do is observe how I am to start, because obviously I can be maybe more stressed, less stressed, more focused, less focused, that kind of thing. So I'll try and work with how I am and make decisions and do things. So I might need to do more relaxation, or try to get into a different state of consciousness through various different techniques similar to meditation or to hypnosis. I often use sensory deprivation and things like that to help me get to that point. And I'll try to go as deep as I can. And then once I get to that sort of point, I will often get the vibrational state, which many people are familiar with in terms of out-of-body experiences. It's a common precursor to having an out-of-body experience, where you feel this kind of vibration through your body. In my case, it feels quite electrical and quite steady, almost like as if I was floating on water or something like that, kind of a sort of undulating sensation, but with an electrical current feeling about it. And then from that, I will sort of focus on where I want to go and go out of body like that. So it's not to do with sleep. A lot of people assume that my OBEs, or that all OBEs, are via sleep states, but in my case, it's not. It's from a waking state. So that's kind of the process that I go through.
Sensory deprivation. How do you get there? Are there tools that you use?
Yeah, I have different things that I work with that. So sometimes I work with Ganzfeld, which is a mild form of sensory deprivation that they use often in telepathy experiments. So it uses, usually I've got my own setup now, sort of goggles, but the classic way was they used to get ping pong balls and cut them in half and put them over the eyes, and then put headphones on, and the headphones would have white noise or pink noise. Pink noise is a bit more palatable. You can listen to it without it kind of stressing your ears, basically. So pink noise is generally better. And then you would have red light in your eyes, and that would cause the pupils to dilate, and then your brain expects information to be coming in, but it doesn't. So then you start to kind of have images or perceptions start to come in. So this is why it's often used in telepathy experiments, because it helps to get you into that state. And they can take just like an undergraduate student or something and just put them in a lab, and using that process, they can get them to a point that they will have some kind of telepathic experience.
Oh, they will have the we were kind of talking about this earlier, like Pandora's box, things that is one of the things, that method, the Estes method, which is also, very similar to that. It scares me. And the people that I've watched people do it in front of me. And the only reason why I haven't done it is because when the ping pong balls come off, right? When the mask comes off and the headphones come off, depending on the experience, most people have just experienced something that they never saw coming. You know, it is completely foreign and completely new. Some take it rather well. Some are like, whoo, right? Because it works, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah. It's a great way to take someone from a completely normal state and then put them into something that can allow them to experience telepathy for the first time and things like that. So yeah, I use different approaches like that, and then my own sound technology, the infraliminal sound and things like that.
Tell us about that. Tell us about that. I go to I host a lot of conferences all year long. That's one thing I enjoy doing it. And every conference, there's at least one booth that is doing that. They've got the whole setup. They've got the lights. They've got the binaural beats, and they've got the head, and people are laid out. Usually, I'll go up to somebody after I see them get up and ask them about the experience, and everybody loves it. And then I have a couple of friends that have portable versions of that, which is probably very similar to yours.
Well, with the infraliminal, the process, that the reason I created it was actually because binaural beats didn't really get me to what I wanted. It didn't really get me where I wanted to go. So I was curious, is there a technology, is there something that I could use with sound that would actually get me closer to an out-of-body experience? So I started experimenting and doing research. And one of the first things I found was that infrasound can have an impact. You hear a lot about EMFs, for example, at different sites, and they can be used for inducing different states. There was a researcher in Canada called Michael Persinger who did a lot of research with stimulating the temporal lobes with electrodes, solenoids, and that would cause people to have different kinds of experiences, including out-of-body experiences. But there's also research that suggests that infrasound might have a similar impact. So I started looking at infrasound, which is basically low level frequencies. So just on the edge of hearing was the type of frequencies I experimented with. And then I started looking at things like subliminal influence as well. So I combined the two together, and that's what led to the infraliminal technology. So the idea was to combine those two things and to help get to primarily the vibrational state, because if you can get to the vibrational state consistently, then that's like the launch pad for the out-of-body experience. So that's really how it was developed, and that's kind of what it's aimed towards.
What does it sound like?
It sounds like frequencies. Well, I have two versions. There's one version that's more for people who use sleep and dreaming to have out-of-body experiences. So I tend to try to take an approach with my teaching and with everything I do to try and cater it to the individual. So rather than doing a one-size-fits-all, I try to do things in a way that is sort of helpful for everyone. Like,
so that's the vibrational state.
Yeah, so I have a water track, so it sounds like water. So that's for people who go into out-of-body experiences through sleep. And then I have one that sounds more like frequencies, which is for more the waking state, people like me who go out of body from more of a meditation or hypnosis type state, sort of trance state. So those two together can be really, really helpful for getting out of body. So that's sort of the approach with it.
How long does it normally take? I know it's different with everybody, but how long
to learn to have OBEs, or just to induce one?
Yeah, to induce one with infraliminal.
There seems to be something with 20-minute cycles. So It seems like when people go into trance, you probably experience this a bit, even with the hypnosis you talked about. I think when there's a 20-minute when someone goes into a trance, it seems to last around 20 minutes. There seems to be this kind of key amount of time. It's obviously it can go longer or shorter, but that seems to be a common time frame, and that's true with Ganzfeld that we were talking about as well. But so it seems to be around 2 cycles. So maybe like 20 minutes in, people will get into a trance state, and then around 20 minutes into that, or some point beyond that in the second cycle, they'll get into the vibrations or be ready to go out of body. So seems to be around either they get there in the 20 minutes or the 40 minutes. So it seems to be 1 or 2 cycles, basically, is how I look at it.
Can you, with exercise and practice, can you jump into it rather quickly if you start to know what you're doing?
For sure, you do get better at doing it more quickly, but I also advise generally to not rush the process, to relax into it, because then usually you're going to have a higher quality, better experience if you do that, rather than sort of trying to make it happen quicker. Because what tends to happen if you do that is the duration of the out-of-body experience will be shorter. You'll have a kind of a quick experience that can be dramatic, but then it will kind of end quickly. So it's generally better to kind of build up to it, and then you can usually sustain the experience for longer.
I like the idea of the shorter version.
Okay.
I like the idea of the shorter version. You know, I have gotten so good at falling asleep, getting into the dream state. I'm excited about it. That's the first thing. And I enjoy and look forward to my sleep time. Okay. It's sport for me. I take it very serious. But I've gotten so good, Graham, that if I put on a books on tape and I know the book, I will only hear the first sentence of the introduction. out, hardcore out. I've gotten really, really good at that. And I'm just wondering if I could do the same thing with liminal, you know, once you understand the process. I like what you're saying, though, if you want to sustain it. Well, how do you end your travels?
That's not usually an issue for most people. Most people, it is more staying out longer, because usually it just ends naturally. Again, it seems to, once people get proficient, it tends to be about the 20-minute thing again. It seems to be in that kind of region, 15, 20 minutes. It can often be much quicker than that, though. It will end much quicker in the early stages, because people tend to have an emotional reaction, either negative or positive. So they'll either be really excited, oh my God, I've done it, I'm out of body, and they overreact, and then that destabilizes the experience and they come back to their body. Or they'll have a kind of fear reaction, oh my God, I'm having an out of body experience, and same thing, they'll kind of destabilize it. So part of my approach with teaching is trying to get people to have a kind of more neutral, relaxed reaction to the experience. It's not easy to do, obviously, because it's natural to have a reaction to what's happening. But if they can control that to some degree, then you can stay out longer, basically, and you won't come back. But if won't come back so quickly. But if you want to come back at any point, usually just focusing on your physical body is enough to come back. I've not had any issues with that, really.
I asked you this question earlier, so I'll ask you in a more general sense. Are you strolling down sidewalks? Are your feet normally on the ground? Or
no?
Really?
No, I'm usually drifting or I'm hesitant to call it flying. Most people call call it flying in an out of body experience, but for me, it feels more like you're drifting in through the air. That's kind of how it feels the majority of time. I've even noted what height I'm at and things like that, because for example, like in my early diaries, I used to write down any details like that. So I realized quite early on it seems to be about consistent with the height of lampposts. So I'm kind of roughly where the top of the lamppost is. That seems to be about the height that was most, especially in my early experiences. I do on occasion find myself on the ground, like just standing somewhere, but not walking. I don't often. It's more I'm fixed to the spot if I'm on the ground. So I will be perceiving one of my most powerful experiences, a precognitive out-of-body experience of the Soho bombing that happened in London, sort of in the late 90s. That experience, I was rooted to the spot, so I felt like I was literally standing there witnessing what happened.
Well, take me through that. How much earlier? I want to get the phrasing correct. How much earlier from the date of the bombings was it?
It was 5 days before.
Wow.
So I was teaching 4 friends the G technique, which is one of the techniques I use to induce out-of-body experiences. So it's a physical technique that uses muscle tension and a breathing technique. So it's a sort of combination of breathing and physical approaches. But yeah, so I was using that method and I was teaching it to these friends, and I started doing the technique and initially thought nothing really was happening. It just sort of felt like I was maybe just hyperventilating or something, but nothing really was going on. And I was starting to doubt the technique. And just as I had that doubt in my mind, this sort of wave came over me and I went down onto the ground, sort of to get stability, I guess. And as I laid onto the ground, I just went out of body straight away. Initially found myself moving through a natural jungle-like environment. I remember there was sort of a stream and trees, and it felt quite tropical. And then that scene seemed to break, shift from one to the other, and I found myself then on the corner of Moore Street and Old Compton Street in central London, Soho, basically in central London. And I was watching sort of everything that was going on, and everything was bluish grey. This is quite important because this state comes back in a few of my experiences. I call it the cerulean state. So it's this kind of bluish, greyish green sort of tint to my vision. So I was seeing down the street, and then an explosion burst out from the right-hand side around 150 meters away, something like that. And then I see this sort of chaos ensue and a man kind of run close by me towards what had happened, as if he was running to help. I looked across to my right and I saw like a restaurant that I used to visit quite often, so I knew exactly where I was. I saw everything that was sort of going on, and then this really powerful emotional wave kind of hit me in the chest. It was like, I guess, related to the people who'd been injured or killed in the actual bombing. It was in a pub, a bar on that street, and I felt the emotional wave hit me in the chest. And then I came out of the experience and went into a sort of almost like a void. It wasn't negative or uncomfortable or anything, but it was just this sort of void-like state. And then slowly I started to become aware of the other people in the room, because they were aware something intense was happening with me. So 2 of them, a guy called Lawrence and another one called Chris, were sitting next to me, and they were trying to coax me out of this trance state that I got into. And they slowly brought me out of it. And then we made a circle, and I described that I'd had a precognitive out-of-body experiences. I felt strongly it was precognitive, and I described that I'd seen this bombing and that it was on Old Compton Street, and I went through all of the details. And then 5 days later, exactly as I described it, there was this bombing on that street. There's a video on my website with Lawrence, one of the witnesses who was there, also describing what he remembers. So
how did you deal with it?
It was very difficult to come to terms with, I think, on many levels.
Sure.
I had a strong emotional connection, I guess, to that part of London. I'd worked in that area. I'd grown up not far from there. So it was somewhere I knew well. And so I had that sort of connection to the place. I also really struggled with the idea of precognition. At the time, I didn't really believe that such a thing could be possible. I still would say I struggle with it, you know, but I guess being more aware of quantum physics and different things like that now, it's sort of a bit more possible in my mind, I guess. I've taken part in experiments at IONS with Dean Radin, and he's done a lot of experiments with presentiment, so feeling the future and things like that. So there's good science supporting that kind of thing as well. So yeah, it wasn't easy to come to terms with, or to sort of understand or put into some kind of coherent context in my mind. But I just had to accept it, basically, because
if it happens again, and I don't know if it has, but would you feel confident enough to go public and maybe call the authorities, or you know, just because you know they don't want to deal with crazy, right? Just some, you know, got some guy on the phone said he had a dream last night, right? And well, people just tend to not take this serious. But if it's verified, like your experience here, isn't this something that people should take more seriously? And would you in the future take yourself more seriously and maybe go public?
I did have one other experience that happened in 2005. So that because there was another attack in London, the 7/7 attack, as it's now known. And I did have a precognitive experience of that as well. That time where I went down into the tunnel of Moore Street tube station, and then I followed the train as it went towards Liverpool Street, and then it continued on to Aldgate East, and that's where the explosion happened. And I stayed at Liverpool Street. So I felt the emotional wave, and again I kind of was at a distance. I kept a sort of distance in the experience. So that experience happened with a longer gap between. So I did warn friends and family, and actually my father at the time was working on London Underground, so he actually worked at one of the stations where one of the attacks happened. So I had a strong, again, like family and connection to the experience. In terms of the authorities, I've kind of wrestled with that, because when the first experience happened, I just didn't know if I believed in something like that.
Exactly.
I didn't know if it would really happen. I just had this strong conviction that it was real, but I couldn't be sure, and I couldn't sort of prove it. And so to go to the authorities, I would be conscious of wasting their time. I would be conscious of, you know, is it really legitimate to do that? Can I really know? Those were the sort of thought processes I had at the time. And I also didn't have any kind of time frame. I didn't know when it would happen. The original one happened after 5 days, but I didn't know it was going to happen in 5 days. I didn't have a definite date for it. So that was the other tricky factor with that. So yeah, I think if it happened again that I had an experience with that cerulean quality, because both of those precognitive experiences had this bluish greeny grey tint to the visual field. If that happened again, I definitely always take those experiences more seriously than anything else. Those ones always suggest to me that something important is happening when that kind of experience happens. So I would probably, I don't know, maybe put the information out there. I don't know if I would go to the authorities, because I don't know if they would really follow up on something like that.
Let me ask you a question. I was told once by a dream expert, this is dreams, by the way, that you cannot read or write anything in a dream. In any dream, you've never seen writing.
That's
and
what
you've
they
never written.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that kind of blew my mind, right? So, and then I had to stop and think, have I ever done that? And no, I haven't. I've never read anything. It's a fascinating thing. Now, what about with an OBE? For instance, this is why I'm bringing it up, right? Okay, so you're in Soho. Is it possible, right, when you're having something like this that you might think it's precog, is it possible to go and pick up a newspaper and read the date? You know what I mean? To have that. Is it? Can you do that?
It is what I would say with OBEs, and especially these kind of OBEs, is the controllability of it is tricky. Like to actually, like in that particular experience, I was rooted to the spot, so kind of being able to perceive specific details, or going somewhere specifically. I think with those kind of, I call them like peak experiences, these very powerful experiences, they feel like you're seeing something that is pre-structured. It's not something that you can interact with in the same way that maybe you can in another experience. Having said that, the first cerulean experience I ever had was much more interactive. And I went into a house, the upper floor of a house near Portobello Road Market in London. And I went into the upper floor. This was in the 90s. So this is the first time it ever happened. And there was a desk laid out. So they had letterhead paper. So it's kind of, in those days, people still use that kind of stuff. So there was letterhead paper. And I was also able to perceive, in London, you have these kind of white plaques on the walls of buildings and whatever that have like the name of the street and usually the postcode or the district. So it said West 11, W11. So I was able to perceive the W11, interestingly, not the street, but the way vision works, it often zooms in. That's interesting as well, because that happens in remote viewing too. You will often zoom in on a detail rather than see the entire field of everything. So there's these interesting qualities with how vision and perception works. But I saw the W11, and then also when I looked at the letterhead paper when I was in the building, my perception zoomed in on his name, so the person who lived there. So I wasn't able to perceive every detail, but I got the person's name and I got the postal district, the W11. So then after that experience, I got the yellow pages, the phone book. Again, shows how old this is, back in the 90s. But I got the yellow pages, and I looked up his name, and there was a man by that name at the right address on the street. In W11. Yeah.
Wow.
So that's an example of seeing text. So it's not easy to do that there, but I don't think it's the same as dreaming. I think with dreaming, the text tends to distort and morph and things like that, because I think that's supposed to be something to do with the rendering in your brain, that your brain can't render such detail in a consistent way over a period. So I think that was the kind of idea that Stephen LaBerge, I believe, put forward of why that's the case. He was the researcher who proved lucid dreaming was a thing. So yeah, in my out-of-body experiences, when I'm in those peak experiences, especially the cerulean experiences, there can be that factor of like extra detail and perception and seeing things like text, etc. But I'm not always able to make that decision or to go to that point. It depends on the nature of the experience, basically.
Here's something else. This is dreaming, but and we're going to take a break right here. For me, the older the dream, the older time period, the dream, the more sepia tone it gets. Right? It's really weird. If it's a dream, a modern dream, set in today, it's usually in color. I swear I don't know why that is, but certainly the older stuff, I guess, seems authentic in black and white. Our guest tonight, Graham Nicholls. We're talking about inducing your own OBE. Fantastic conversation. More with Graham right after this short break. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. This is Fade to Black. Stay with us. We'll be right back after this short break. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to get your alerts and access to over 2,000 videos. Click that subscribe button right now. Go to jimmychurchradio.com and get the Fade to Black official podcast. 2,000 episodes, all of them commercial free for just $2 a month. Watch Into the Vortex on Gaia TV. It's Fade to Black for the screen. Simple to do. Go to Gaia.com, search Jimmy Church, or click on the link below. Follow Fade to Black on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Get all of the show updates every single day. It's now called X, but who cares? How you doing? Jimmy Church here. Special announcement. Get your Fade to Black t-shirts. That's right. Help support the show. Help support everything that we do over here. We've got 2 t-shirts. We've got 2 ways to get them. Get your Fade to Black t-shirt today. Go Beckley Teppy. Go to jimmychurchradio.com and become a Fadernaut. Get a membership. That's right. Everything is commercial free. You have access to downloads, and you get to call yourself a Fadernaut. Jimmy Church, Gaia TV, Fade to Black, here at Machu Picchu with Brian Forster and Hidden Inca Tours. Amazing tour so far, Brian, but we're here to announce what we're going to do next year in 2026. What's going on?
Okay, November 2026, we're going to have our major tour of Peru and Bolivia, either a pre or post tour of Paracas and Nazca on the coast. And then after that, 6 days in Easter Island.
Bucket list, Easter Island. Come join Brian and I and his amazing team here at Hidden Inca Tours for Peru, Bolivia, and Easter Island. Signing out. Say goodbye, Brian.
Bye, gang.
River Moon Coffee, makers of the Fade to Black blend. Truly the best coffee on planet Earth. Just visit rivermoonwellness.com or their Amazon store. It's all simple to do. You can check out the Fade to Black blend, the Game Changer blend, or any of their Black Moon Wellness products. It's the only coffee I drink. It is the best, and it's Doc. Again, rivermoonwellness.com. All right. Welcome back. Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Graham Nicholls is with us live from the UK, telling us how to induce your own OBE. I have learned so much tonight. Graham, what do you do about skeptics?
Oh, well, I think my approach is quite different again with that, because I've generally been pretty open to debating them and to kind of having the conversation, because I'm quite well versed in the science and the parapsychology and all of that kind of thing. I quite enjoy engaging with them, because I think the science is on the side of these things. When you look at the research into remote viewing and telepathy and all these different areas, precognition, etc., I think actually there's good science supporting it. So I think the skeptics in many ways are being unscientific in this context, because they're rejecting a field of science because they ideologically disagree with it. So I've debated people like Sue Blackmore, who is the sort of major skeptic when it comes to out-of-body experiences. So I've done a radio debate and engaged with her on other platforms as well. So yeah,
Is it that it doesn't the skeptic's position with anything like this comes from a mindset of simplicity? They don't normally, they dismiss it as it's you're just dreaming. It's just imagination. And they just stop right there. Like that's all this is, and there's nothing else to discuss here. Do you find that that's the case, that they don't really bring anything of substance to the table, that they just dismiss it as, psychotic, you're dreaming, you're hallucinating, and that's it?
Yeah, sure. I would say the average uninformed skeptic would definitely take that position. They would just say, "Oh, there's no science," even though there is. They just don't know about it, or they would say that, yeah, it's just a dream, a hallucination, or there's been fairly recent research suggesting that it's some kind of bodily distortion. The temporoparietal junction causes this body distortion, and then that is what an out-of-body experience is. That's the sort of party line for the skeptical community now in terms of the science. But when you actually look at the experience and the complexity of the experience, that's just not backed up by the research. So I think they're kind of generally just ignoring or twisting the data that's out there to kind of to conform with what they want to believe, really.
Yeah. This is where I'm going to talk some shit. Okay. Here's the truth. Okay. This is the truth. I will always bring the truth. The skeptical community is tiny. Okay.
Definitely.
It's small. And they hang out with a few other skeptics, but they yell and scream loudly like there's some big group of influence. They are not. They are tiny and they are uninformed. I think that all of them, every single one of them, believes in the paranormal. Every single one of them has seen a ghost. Every single one of them is spiritual. It's just that they're friends. They want to be in a group. So they're in the skeptical group so they can have a sense of belonging. And that's the truth, man. I will not look at it any other way. They're a lonely, bitter group of people. Being skeptical of anything that's cool, anything that's fun, anything that allows you to think beyond is a great place to be. And they're jealous of that because they don't have that sense of joy in their lives. And I am speaking the truth. Skeptics are the easiest bunch to debate. It's way too easy. You're too smart. I can imagine you had a lot of fun with it, because it's just. And here's the other part. All right, science is now destroying the skeptical community. Science is more woo, is more crazy than our community. It's like, it's crazy what they're talking about now. Yeah. Entanglement and dimensions and the multiverse and multi-world theory, and of course time travel and everything else, dark matter and dark energy. All of these subjects are supporting and propping up the things that Dean Radin and others have been talking about for a very long time, including yourself.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, exactly what you said about the skeptical community being small. I used to work with Rupert Sheldrake, who you may know has also
he's
done a lot
great.
of research. Yeah, he's done a lot of research on telepathy, etc. And he asked me to attend a skeptical conference to write an article about it. So I actually basically went undercover to the amazing meeting when James Randi was alive. And I spent a weekend there, saw Richard Dawkins speak and Richard Wiseman and all these different skeptics. And it was interesting because exactly what you were saying, it was kind of, they did sort of need this sense of community that was really obvious. And then on top of that, there was this kind of bandstanding. They were just sort of celebrating this,
cheering themselves.
But ironically, hardly any science was discussed there. It was all just, oh, this is all nonsense, but no real reason why it was nonsense, and it was a very strange experience, but very interesting. And Randi kind of I actually approached Randi and I said to him, about Rupert Sheldrake's research that he'd done with dogs who are able to psychically be aware of when their owner's coming home. So Rupert's done a lot of research with this. He works a lot with animals, which is interesting because animals will just react and they don't have any belief system sort of stopping them from doing any of these things. So he did a lot of research that was all very controlled and used randomization to avoid any bias. Like the dog just, for example, got used to when the owner was coming home, so they would use random times to avoid that being a factor. And also didn't use any sort of specific transportation, so the dog couldn't know because of the sound of the car or something. So Randi had publicly said that he'd replicated this and it was complete nonsense. And Rupert Sheldrake challenged him on this and wanted to see this evidence of him replicating it. Of course, there was no evidence, and Randi made lots of excuses that the evidence had been lost in a flood that happened, and he'd lost contact with the owners of the dogs, so Rupert couldn't talk to them either. And it was very unbelievable, Randi's excuse. So when I saw Randi there, I kind of asked him, can we actually discuss the science and why you think this is invalid? Can we discuss it? And he just kind of threw his arms up in the air and he said, that's not science, and just kind of ran off, and that was it.
Richard Dawkins, not to dwell on this, we don't have to stay on the subject, but back in the day, the first couple of times I listened to Richard Dawkins and his crew, right? I could drop a million names here, but I thought, man, guy's pretty smart. All right. And then I started to see through him, and he said a couple of things that were so fantastically stupid that I scroll past him, if you know what I mean. Just in general, I guess literally too as well, but he doesn't impress me anymore. It's really, really weird how I don't care what he has to say. I don't think it's important. Isn't that weird? And I do that with so many people now, where
I think he did. Yeah, I think he did go downhill for sure. I think he had more to say at the beginning when he sort of first came out. He had more of a opinion, and I think after that he did just start parroting what people like Randy and other sort of skeptics were saying, and he was just sort of repeating what they were saying. And he actually went to see Rupert Sheldrake at his home as part of a documentary, and said that he wasn't interested in looking at the science. So Rupert said, well, I'm not interested in doing the interview then. So
well, see, Richard Dawkins is more focused today on Richard Dawkins, the personality. Okay, he hasn't done research in decades, right? He hasn't been in a laboratory. The dude has not been around a set of beakers, or doing any biology no. He's more concerned with his rock star ego and standing ground on these theories and ideas. That's my take, and I don't think I'm far off with that. He hasn't brought anything to the table in a long time, and it's more and more difficult with the skeptical community to do that. It's when science is really starting to get out there. I think that the idea of something intelligent out there, call it God, whatever you want, or whatever your spiritual system is, that part doesn't matter. But consciousness eventually is going to get figured out. And that entire view of the skeptical community and everybody that goes and that does these conferences and these intellectual talks that they do in front of, and cheer themselves on, is it's not going to hold water anymore for them. And that is my take. And eventually it's going to happen. I just don't know when it is. I'm excited though. I feel that we're closer now to understanding consciousness than ever before, but we still haven't made the breakthroughs.
I think you're right. I would say one thing with the skeptical community on a positive note, though, when I was just starting to kind of move into this sort of area with going public with my out of body experience work, a skeptic said to me, well, if this is all true, why don't you get in the lab and prove it, kind of thing. And I thought, well, that's actually like quite a valid point. And that's actually what led me to take part in experiments and ultimately to do the experiment at IONS, get involved with the Rhine Research Center. So I did a 14-week study with the Rhine Research Center where there were blind targets set up in the US. I was in Estonia at the time, and I would have to try and perceive the target ahead of time remotely. So I used remote viewing, I used out-of-body experiences, I tried different variations, and again we got positive results with that, like statistically significant results. Same with the research I did with Dean Radin, which has now been replicated as well with different organizations. And then also with Sheldrake, I actually got the highest score he'd ever seen in a single trial on his precognition test. So all of the research that I've done has had positive results. So I feel now the science is kind of supporting what I'm doing as well.
We need more Rupert Sheldrakes out there. The high level intellectuals that are respected, that actually, I say this almost on every show, but it's so important, that don't give a crap, want to think outside of the box and go and chase these ideas. We need more of that. We don't have enough of it. And Rupert does not give a crap. He doesn't. And we need more of that. And he's respected by everybody, right? And so, and the way that he speaks, he's got that kind little whisper that he does, which forces you to do what? To lean in and catch every word. And that's that. We need more of the Rupert Sheldrakes of the world out there that aren't afraid to think about something, ponder something, and then go figure it out. Those every great advance that we've had in science, every single one was because somebody thought outside of the box. It wasn't somebody that was thinking inside of the box. It comes from another place, and that's what Rupert brings to the table. Sometimes he scares the crap out of me, though. He's only that he talks about things that a lot of people are kind of afraid of, that we don't want it to be this way. But that's part of it, isn't it? That we need to confront this stuff and figure out what's going on, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's why me engaging with the science and taking part in the experiments, as far as I know, I'm the only OBE author, or at least living OBE author, who's taking part and involved in that kind of science. So yeah, I think that's a really important thing as well, that we need more research in that area and more people willing to engage with that as well.
Now, let's have some fun for a second. Okay? This is my mind. This is where my mind goes. Is it possible that some of the ghosts and spirits and entities that we see are somebody that's doing an OBE? Right? And can a ghost see you? Can you see a ghost in an OBE? And are some of these things that we're seeing are somebody that's doing an OBE from the other side of the planet, or from the future, or from the past even?
Well, I definitely think that some of the ghost experiences may well be someone having an out-of-body experience, especially probably when people perceive it more as like a shadow figure, because that seems to be how people see someone when they're having an out-of-body experience. It seems to be a kind of shadow figure, silhouette. That seems to be the most common way that people perceive someone. They can also see them as fully physical. I had one student who her partner saw her in his bedroom. She literally was sitting on the end of his bed, perceived her as if she was physically there, and then phoned her up afterwards and described everything, what she was wearing, etc. And it was all correct to what she was wearing on that day. And she told him that she'd had an out-of-body experience and visited him. So that's an example of someone seeing someone completely as they look physically. But yeah, if you didn't know that person and you saw someone just appear at the end of your bed and then disappear again, your initial reaction would be, oh, that was a ghost. Or I guess with ghosts, we often have something like they look like they're from another time. They might be dressed in a particular way. I've had ghost experiences as well. And when I lived in Tallinn, which is, I lived in a very, very old house in the old town of Tallinn. And I saw a woman dressed in a kind of night dress, but it was obviously an old sort of at least from the Victorian sort of era nightgown that she was wearing. And I saw her, looked completely physical, looked like there was a woman standing there. I kind of stopped, startled as I saw her, and then she just disappeared. So that's an example of, it had a ghost experience because of this old factor that she seemed to be from the past. But I guess, there's no reason why many ghost experiences couldn't be someone having an out-of-body experience. And I have interacted in out-of-body experiences with people who seem to have passed over. I had a very powerful experience as well with a plane crash where I saw more than 100 people, about 140 something people, who'd all passed in a plane crash. I saw many elements of their experience. It was in a very misty, cloudy kind of environment. So very much classically what we think of when we think of sort of an afterlife type environment. I saw elements of their life review. It was like seeing like almost like not a bubble, but almost like a kind of a screen or an image above their head. And I was literally seeing their thoughts and processes going on in their mind as they were going through this life review. And then I saw them drifting into the cloud as if they were going from that level to some other level. Again, it was at this distance where I felt like I was rooted to that spot. I felt like I couldn't go any closer. It was like if I did go closer, maybe I would be drawn into that experience.
Yeah, you get sucked in too. Did you find out was it a specific plane crash? Did you research that?
Yeah, I did, because I literally, it happened sort of early in the morning, that particular experience, and later on that day, it literally came on the news that there'd been this plane crash in Svalbard, which is an island off of Norway. And it described the people in the crash as being of Russian or Ukrainian descent, which confirmed what I'd seen. They all seemed to have that kind of background and kind of look to them, and they seemed to be workers, like outside workers, and that's what they were going there for. It was like a mining group. They were, I think, mining or manual work anyway, like outside work. So they were all kind of very sort of rugged looking, and it had that that they all had that kind of look in the experience. So everything about the crash that happened on that day and at the time that I had the out of body experience all seemed to confirm that that's the place that I saw. And then interestingly as well, maybe 2012, something like that, I had an experience again where I found myself in Svalbard, that on that island in off of Norway. So in that one, I saw at the end of the experience, I came back via Finland to Estonia. So Finland's just above Estonia, so I was kind of drifting over Finland, and then I came down into a place in Finland and I saw a Sami shaman. So the traditional indigenous people of that region. And interestingly, now I now work and teach a Sami shaman the out of body experience work. So and he connected with me because of the that experience that I had. So it's interesting, this sort of link with Svalbard. I haven't actually physically been there yet, but I feel like at some point I will go there because it seems to be calling me in some way.
There is a new TV series out with Ewan McGregor, and it's called The Long Way Home. And it's about him and his friend, Charlie, on motorcycles going out somewhere around the world. And it's fantastic. Well, the new series, and you need to check it out. You know where they go?
Where?
Through Sweden and Finland, down through Estonia, back to, they start in the UK. So, and they hop islands off the coast of Norway on ferries with their motorcycles, and they visit all the indigenous cultures and go in and have dinner, and it's a fantastic series. So I'm telling you, you need to go and watch that.
I did watch The Long Way Round,
right, which is that's fantastic. That's amazing. So
yeah, where they went around the whole world on motorbikes. Yeah. So I did watch that one.
Watch the new one. They start in Ewan lives in Scotland, so he comes down, picks up Charlie, and then they jump across. I think they go to France first. Right, they're at the cliffs of Dover or whatever. What's that ferry that goes across there? I can't remember. But that goes to France. So, but yeah, they just head north, man. They go all the way up to the top of Norway and down through Finland, through Estonia, go through the Balkans. I think, they do that whole trip and then come back down through Holland, back into the coastline, and then head back to the UK. So, and they're out for like 6 weeks. Anyway, so just go and check that out. Last week, I want your opinion on this. See, people need to pay attention to dreams. I think that dreams can also include an OBE, but things that are accurate that you can't explain. It's like this local, non-local phenomenon that happens. But if you pay attention, all right, so this is what happened to me. This is last week. Graham, not making this up. I have this very vivid dream that I go to one of my oldest friends. His name is Bruce Pfeiffer. And Bruce, when we were in high school back in Indianapolis in the early 80s, 1980, he had a Mustang, okay? Ford Mustang, like a 71 Mustang Fastback that we were all jealous of in high school. Bruce and that Mustang. But in the dream, he hasn't had that Mustang for years. But in the dream, I go to Bruce's house today, right? Modern. And I go to his house in Indianapolis because he's selling that Mustang. So I go there to buy the Mustang, and I go and I get to the front of his house, and there's the Mustang. And then sitting in the front of it is a purple Dodge Challenger, like a 71, beautiful. And they're sitting but he won't sell me the purple Challenger. He'll only sell me the Mustang. Dream ends. I wake up, but I remember the whole thing. I was like, man, that was crazy. That was crazy. That was nuts. That was nuts. So what do? I call Bruce that day, and his wife picks up, Julie. Hey, Jimmy, I said, hey, what's going on? Nothing. I said, where's Bruce? He's taking a nap. I said, okay. What are you doing? I'm getting ready to take a nap. I said, hey, Julie, I had a dream about you guys last night. And she goes, okay. What was it about? I said, Bruce was selling his Mustang. And she laughs. What? I said, yeah. So I go over to the house, and the Mustang's sitting there. And in front of it, he had a purple Dodge Challenger, like a 71, sitting there, but he wouldn't sell me that car. She goes, a what? I said, a purple 71 Dodge Challenger, but he would only sell me the Mustang. I don't know what that was all about. She goes, Jimmy, I bought him a purple 71 Dodge Challenger. It's sitting in the garage. I go, what? She goes, I can't, you dream that. I go, what do you mean he's got a purple 71 Dodge Challenger sitting in the garage. It won't start, but I bought it for him like 10 years ago. What? Now, how crazy is that? And her and I sat there on the phone. The dream was so vivid, but he has a purple 71 Dodge Challenger hidden in the garage that nobody knows about. Trippy, isn't it? Now, what's the significance of that? Is that some kind of precog thing? What if he sells it to me in the future, right? Isn't that even stranger? But what do you make of that? Is that some kind of OBE that I went to his house and scoped out his Dodge Challenger? I was speechless when she was speechless. You should have heard the pause. What? What? She goes, as a matter of fact, Jimmy, he had it out in front of the house last summer with his son, and his son brought over his car, and they were trying to jumpstart it right in front of the house. But it's been back in the garage, and maybe that's what I saw. I don't know, but it was crazy to have that. I was beyond words, Graham.
That sounds amazing for sure. I do think that psychic information often comes through in dreams, but I think it makes sense really when you're in a dream state. You're unconscious, or semi-conscious. You're in this situation where your mind is much more fluid, much more kind of focused internally, and I think that's when often for a lot of people, these psychic things tend to kind of bubble up, and your brain maybe mixes that in with day-to-day stuff. So you get, and I think that's often how psychic things are. There's often an element of your consciousness, your psychology, the things that are going on in your mind, but then also these bits of psychic information that come in. And I think that's true with remote viewing. The same way with remote viewing, you have to kind of strip out the noise, strip out the psychology as much as you can, and get to the actual psychic signal. As Russell Targ used to say, you have to get to the actual kind of pure signal. And I think that's true with dreams. It's true with lots of different psychic experiences. There will be bits of your psychology and bits of psychic information, and the trick is learning to differentiate between those two factors. So I think your dream was a mix of what was going on in your own psychology and your own focus, but also you were tuning into your own innate psychic ability. And I think we all have that to some degree.
And how messed up is it that people do and experience just what I spoke about, but don't act on it? And if I hadn't called Bruce's house and spoke to his wife, if I didn't, what I mean? If I didn't react to it, I wouldn't have known how special this was. And that's the thing. So many people, you're right. They have this ability, they go through it all the time, but they don't care, or they don't act on it. I did, and I ended up bumping into things for like 2 days. I was so blown away by hearing her reaction. She was dumbfounded. She couldn't believe it. And when she told me, it was the same thing. But I was what if I didn't make that phone call? Right? That's the difference, isn't it?
There's a famous book called An Experiment with Time by Dunn. That's a really interesting book if people are interested in exploring that side of things with dreaming. Dunn had this approach in that book where he recorded his dreams and sort of analyzed them on a regular basis, looking for these little pieces of precognition. And if you can actually replicate that experiment for yourself, you can just keep a diary of your dreams and make specific types of elements. And there are certain symbols that often seem to come up for different individuals. So some people will see a particular type of environment or a particular color or something like that within the dream state, which will signify something to do with a particular kind of thing. So I don't know, they might see a dog, for example, and if they see a dog, that means something to do with an animal will happen the next day or something like that. So he goes through in that book all different kind of ways that you can make these notes, and you can work out your own dream symbology and start to understand your own precognitive perceptions in the dreams. So that's something that people listening can do if they're interested in that kind of thing.
I find it fascinating. Dean Radin said to me once, and I've just never forgotten it. He said, it's not a bunch of big stuff. We're looking for big stuff. It happens at the quantum level. A lot of little tiny things are happening. And that's where it's happening at. It's not something that is out in front. It's something that we have to measure at the quantum level. And that's where these things occur. When you went through your testing with Dean Radin, scientifically, what did you come away with?
Well, actually, that experiment was on affecting the quantum double slit experiment, the famous double slit experiment. So he had an interferometer which basically fires photons. It's just a sort of long device, and it just fires photons through the double slit. And ions, they have this sort of steel Faraday room, I guess you would say. It's like a cell. You go in there and they kind of lock you in. And then basically I was in there, I was kind of had headphones on, and they guide you through this process, and you have to try and affect the double slit. So try and alter the way that the quantum wave is expressing itself, I guess you would say. So I went in there, I started to go through the experiment. Dean had like a computer hooked up, so he had all the data coming through on that level, and then there was a light on top of the sort of structure in front of you. So when the light became bright, that basically meant you were being successful, so you had something to focus on. So I was in this room, I was focusing on it, and then I went into this intense vibrational state, which was kind of unexpected. I started literally getting the vibrations as if I was going to have an out-of-body experience. But obviously I was doing this experiment, so I didn't want to have an out-of-body experience. So I was kind of pulling myself back. But then by pulling myself back, I was just generating this incredible amount of energy. And the whole space seemed to become intensely hot. I started sweating. It was so intense in there. And then after the experiment, his assistant opened the door, and everyone said they felt this kind of heat kind of come out from there. And I was kind of sweating and absolutely exhausted. And interestingly, they didn't register, I think this is what she said, they didn't register any temperature change in the space, yet everybody felt the heat. And I was obviously very hot. So, but there was no physical temperature change like registered. And then we had a conversation. Dean started talking about orgone energy and things like that, and that it seemed like something had been generated, because I guess normally I would go out of body when I get into that intense vibration, but in this situation I was trying to do the experiment. But then we analyzed the data, and it was positive in the predicted direction. So i.e. It showed that I was able to affect the quantum double slit experiment. And then Dean has replicated that experiment with many different people, and it's been replicated in different labs. So now we have sort of definite evidence of being able to perceive things or alter something on a quantum level psychically. So you're literally altering reality on a fundamental level psychically. That's what that experiment basically
and here's what's fascinating with that. Going back to Richard Doofus Dawkins and addressing him, that Schrodinger, the double slit, and the conversations and the possible theories that came out of that and the discussion in the physics community was a pretty solid conversation about you can change a particle state with observation. Now that right there, that is the most woo-woo, crazy ass tinfoil hat stuff that this community has always talked about, right? But now you have the science community saying that, oh man, you can change just by looking at it. Well, that right there flips the skeptics and the Dawkins crew, flips them on their head. It is so fundamental with everything else that we experience in this community, isn't it? But this is science talking about this. This isn't you and I talking about this. This is the black and white pragmatic world of science. It says that you can change a particle by observation. That's nuts, isn't it?
Yeah, completely. I mean, they do find ways to kind of get around it, or they say, oh, I don't agree with the Copenhagen interpretation, or they say that, well, it's not exactly observation, it's measurement, or they find ways
they can't even measure. See, that's the other thing. That's the other thing. You're so spot on the money, Graham. They can't measure anything. Measurement is one of the biggest problems that they have. And then you throw observation into it. I don't know if they'll ever overcome this, but measurement is a big problem, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. There are a lot of things that are considered constant or consistent in science, like the speed of light or gravity or the freezing point or the boiling point. All of these kind of things that are seen as absolutes actually are not absolutes. And when they actually do research on them, there can be fluctuations and alterations within these things that are considered constant. So yeah, we have a situation where it's easy to assume that all of these things are established in science, but so much of science, the edges are very fuzzy, and it does show that these other things like the paranormal are definitely quite possible within that framework. And I think that the work I did at Ions shows that, because what you're dealing with is not just that observation physically is altering quantum reality, but observation psychically. So doing it remotely, like perceiving it just in a psychic way, so literally just putting your attention, or whatever that psychic function is, wherever that psychic function is also able to influence things on a quantum level. So that opens things up even more. So then it's not even local, it's consciousness can move and perceive and alter things on a completely multi-leveled reality.
Is it just as simple as it's just entanglement all the time? Yeah, what I mean by that is, if we have, again, just fundamentally something as basic as one particle entangled with another particle, no matter the distance or whatever objects are in between, can affect that particle's position and spin, no matter the distance, at the speed of now. So just that, in a fundamental sense, just that right there, goes against just about everything. It goes against the speed of light. It goes against so many different things. But if that's the case, then I think that entanglement should start to explain all of this phenomena.
I do think it's the best we have in terms of an explanation of what's going on, that some form of entanglement is at the core of all of this. One of the first theories I came across that talked about that was Brian Josephson, who he won the Nobel Prize for physics, and he's very interested in psychic phenomena and all of these kinds of areas. And he wrote a paper called Biological Utilization of Quantum Non-Locality, which, if you breaking that paper, basically is arguing that psychic abilities are utilizing quantum non-locality, that our brains are entangled, that everything essentially is entangled, and therefore there can be this interconnection. There was the argument for a long time within physics that things couldn't scale up, that you couldn't have entanglement in the brain because the brain is too warm for quantum effects. But that's since been disproven, because there are effects that are now shown to happen in the brain and happen at sort of higher levels. So now we have quantum biology and things like that. So it does seem more and more that that's where things are going. Then you've got the work of people like Roger Penrose, who came up with the ORCOR theory, orchestrated objective reduction theory, which is basically this, again, comes down to this quantum effect. So it talks about that the brain has microtubules. They're throughout the body, microtubules, but the ones that are concentrated in the brain, he would argue that they are entangled, and that's where consciousness is arising from, that there is this random or potentiality factor going on with these microtubules in the brain, and that ultimately leads to an entangled consciousness, and that can ultimately lead to things like out-of-body experiences, or in his ideas, things like near-death experiences. It kind of gets into that kind of area.
Well, it does. And I would take it one step further. I haven't heard any physicists go to this extreme, but I think it's next. And I'm not a physicist, okay? But my brain works strangely. I think that every particle in the universe is entangled with another particle. Every single one. And that includes every single particle in your brain is entangled with, and that's it. I think that is where it's going to lead to. Forcing entanglement, okay, all right, I could see that too as well. But then you would be detangling, is that a word? Detangling from the particle that it was already entangled with. But I think that everything is entangled. And I think that explains not only consciousness, but dark energy, even maybe possibly dark matter, things that are doing stuff in this universe that we can't see, touch, feel, measure. We can't. We say it's there. You know, we say it's there to make the math work. That's the only reason why it helps make the math work. But when you take things into this other level of string theory and vibrations and what determines something's future, right? What it is going to be. I think that goes right back into the vibration conversation that we have with both light and sound and dimensions. And suddenly, all of this starts to make a lot of sense. And going back to entanglement. And I think that we're getting closer and closer to understanding this. And when one domino falls, Graham, they all fall.
Yeah, I think interesting you mentioned string theory. There's another possibility as well, called hidden sector matter from string theory, that basically we could have a complete replica of ourselves made of hidden sector matter. That's kind of what that theory, or some elements of string theory, could lead to, or could potentially be the case if that theory turns out to be true. So if that's the case, then we would literally have like a replica, like an energetic, a hidden sector matter replica of ourselves. So then you would have a replica brain, replica everything. But so that, what would that be? That would be a spirit or a ghost or so you can start to even move into that area. It could be an astral body or an etheric body, or whatever, like it's something along the lines of those ideas that have existed for centuries, could potentially be the case if string theory turns out to be correct. So I find all of that really amazing and fascinating, because there are so many possibilities of how the experiences that I have could potentially be integrated and explained in terms of science.
Well, so many physicists, including Brian Greene, in his new book, latest book, it was written 5 years ago now, but that, and it goes back to Hawking radiation and some of the ideas of what a black hole does and is, that the one thing that kind of will stick around after everything is said and done is thought, and thinking will continue. And that's a pretty, I don't know if they're talking about consciousness without saying the word consciousness, because physicists aren't allowed to, right? They're not allowed to say the word consciousness, but that thought and thinking continues. Well, isn't that what we are talking about? You know what I mean? It's weird. And that information, thought, thinking doesn't get destroyed in a black hole.
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of the possibilities of what you can perceive in an out-of-body experience, there's no limitation in terms of space and time, it seems, as well. And I've had experiences in space as well. So being in the upper atmosphere of the Earth, being in a completely unknown part of space, even going close to the sun and things like that, which obviously you couldn't do in a physical sense, but within an out-of-body experience, these things become a possibility and become something that you can explore.
Somebody just posted, and it's interesting. This is more philosophy. I personally don't believe science rules will be able to prove it. Here is, first off, philosophy is a lot of BS in my book. It's just somebody with daddy problems, you know, and they wrote a book about it. But anyway, putting that aside, philosophy is starting to get a blurred line with physics, and it's pretty weird. And the ideas of philosophy, I think some of it, I should say, are okay to overlap into physics, so we can go back and forth and maybe get science and physics more involved with the philosophical side of things. And that's my take. Philosophy in of itself bores me. It's worse than Stephen Dawkins, actually, or Richard Dawkins. It's actually worse than that. But where can everybody go and get your book, Navigating the Out-of-Body Experience?
It's available, the usual, Amazon. It's on Kindle and in physical form. Navigating the Out-of-Body Experience. They want the black covered version because it's just been re-released with new chapters and updated, sort of 10-year anniversary kind of thing. So that one's got extra chapters, more like articles in it. It's got more techniques. It's all been expanded basically. So make sure they get the new special edition version. And also on my website, they can go for my course, private tuition, more information about my first book as well. If people are more interested in my own experiences and that kind of thing, my first book, Avenues of the Human Spirit, that one goes into more of my own experiences and the philosophy that kind of came out of my experiences and my outlook on life, basically. So go for that one if they're interested in that. If you want more the practical side of things, go for the course or the book. And and the infraliminal technology as well, which helps get you to the vibrations and that kind of thing, is also available on there.
Yeah, we've got everything up. It just popped up in the chat. Thank you, Bill. Thank you, John. And thank you, Jessica. We've got the links up for the books and, of course, for your website, too, as well. So just thank you. And I look forward, Graham, to our next conversation. I know that, you know, tonight we had a lot of different things that we kind of had to touch upon. But I look forward to our next conversation and we can stay laser focused. Thank you so much, man.
That would be great. You're very welcome. It's been great.
Enjoy the rest of your day now over there in the UK. Thank you,
I
Graham.
will. Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Perfect night on the show. That was an amazing conversation. And thank you, Bill, Jessica, John. We've got all the links for Graham up in the chat. Of course, we have it on our social media and over on our website. And with that, tomorrow night here on Fade to Black, Tony Rodriguez is here. And it's Tony's first time on the show. It's going to be a deep dive. Yeah, that's it. We're going to do it tomorrow night with Tony Rodriguez. So you're not going to want to miss that. And until then, tomorrow night, all I've got is go Backley Tappy. Fade to Black is produced by Hilton J. Palm, Renee Newman, and Michelle Freed. Special thanks to Bill, John, Dex, Jessica, Dennis, and Kevin. Webmaster is Drew the Geek. Music by Doug Aldrich. Intro, Space Boy. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network. This broadcast is owned and copyrighted 2024 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network, Inc. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black or the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Go Backley Tappy.